Well, Lee, thanks very much for joining us. It has been a tough season by anyone's standards. Just how relieved are you that it's done? Championship status secured with a game to go.
I think that's fantastic. Obviously, it was a crazy season, very, very topsy-turvy. Learnt an awful lot. I think you learn more in the losses than you do in the wins. We brought together a group of 15, 16 new players in the end, and more if you include the under-23s that we brought in. And we've had some great times and some awful times this year. And like I say, it's been a real roller coaster, but something that we've still enjoyed and learnt an awful lot from.
You say it's been a roller coaster. Indeed, it has. I mean, you went from one point at the end of October, you're up in the playoff positions, everything's looking fantastic, and then suddenly there was that game against Brighton, 2-0 loss, and that sparked that run where you had 11 losses out of 12 league games. And you must have thought at some point they were only minor losses, but they were losses. How much did you learn from those? What did you think, oh my gosh, how do we get out of this?
Well, I think you learn, like I said, a huge amount from any loss, and you certainly learn more from losing than you do winning. It was a great start for us. Lots of new players coming in, real good vibe, real good buzz, record season ticket sales, fantastic attendances, some good home wins, games like Aston Villa where we came back from behind. And then obviously we hit that patch, and it was just unbelievable, some of the things that went on, both on and off the field. And really tough and disappointing, because all we wanted to do was stick in there, do you know what I mean, and give everybody the opportunity to have a fight in the last sort of 10 games for the playoffs. And that was the pressure that we were putting ourselves under, and it didn't quite happen for whatever reason. And a lot of new players coming together, a lot of new personalities, and a time, like I say now, we're able to reflect on, having known that we've done the job and secured championship status, and learn from moving forward.
You talk about reflecting on, of course, football is a long season. The best teams do survive, the best teams do win out traditionally because it is played over such a long season. You talk about records. Well, yeah, there was the dubious record of that 11 losses, but there's also a positive record when you look back on the season in terms of your win rate.
Well, I think that there's been a lot of positives, actually. I think to name a few, I think we went on the best sort of League Cup run for a long time. Obviously, home attendances have been huge, and fantastic support that we've had from the supporters, both home and away. But we move on to this Saturday, for example, I think we've the best crowd since the 70s. So we've signed players, we've sold a player that was our record sale, which has enabled us to invest in a lot of younger players. I think for me, during my time here, as a young manager, it's been overall good. I think when I came in, obviously, to help keep the club in the division was huge. Then to start off so well this season, it was fantastic with a new bunch of players after trying to formulate and get the right formula to win. And obviously we go on a bad run, but then followed up by another great run. And it just seems so strange, because for us, obviously, the Championship, for Bristol City in recent years, the Championship is tough. It's a competitive league, and where we are, we're trying to build this sustainable progression and to end up in the place we want to be, which is the Premier League. And I was talking to my dad, and I was having a bit of playful banter with him, and I think my win ratio is actually better than his, and he was a manager that took us to the playoff final. So it just goes to show how over a period of time there's been a lot of positives, albeit one obviously horrific run that was a severe negative.
Well, you mentioned your father. There is an argument that perhaps 20, 30 years ago it was much easier to be a football manager than it is now, with the advent of social media and the noise that comes with it, that impatience that there is with football. How difficult is it to deal with that noise and to push on through it?
Well, I think it's difficult, there's no doubt, and that's why the changes happen often and regular in football. I think the average tenure is 1.1 year. I think in the Championship for a first-time manager, I think it's 7 months. So you see how quickly over the Football League managers come and go. But I believed in the project when I came here. I believed in Steve Lansdown's project. I'm a Bristol City fan at heart, absolutely. And I've had a history here, which means I want the right things, not just for Lee Johnson, but more importantly for the football club. And that for this club and the size of the city and the new stadium is about that sustainable progression. And you're only going to do that by developing young players, by making sure that you grow controlled. And I think this club has been caught before by sort of throwing money at it in the wrong areas and basically at the tip of the iceberg, but the foundations have fallen apart. And now we've got the stadium, we've got the fan base, we've got a fantastic youth setup, and facilities are getting better all the time, and it's a great city for football. And we want to make sure that if we do get to the Premier League, and when we do get to the Premier League, again, that's sustainable, and we can be a club like a West Brom or a Stoke that have been up through the Championship and then stayed in the Premier League.
Well, you've answered that as Lee Johnson, the professional coach and former professional footballer. Of course, that's what you've signed up to, and rightly so. But of course, that must have an effect though on your family life. Of course, your father is in it. He's been poorly as well. He's had a tough season.
You're going to make me cry, Lisa.
I'm not going to make
it's
you
like
cry.
Oprah Winfrey.
That's what I'm aiming for. Cry. But it must be terribly difficult for your family to endure that, especially from the social media point of view. I mean, it's been nice to see that a lot of the fans have come out in support towards the end. But
well, do you know what? I have to say, there's a lot of support. You know, the fans are very, very good. Do you know what I mean? And Bristol City fans have been great. Whether I bump into people around the shopping centres, walking around town with my family, everybody's very, very positive. Of course, this is the nature of the beast now. You talk about social media and how that's changed the world, really. You've only got to look at the President of the United States is on social media, which seems like madness to me, but I'm just a football coach, so I'm certainly liable for any stick that comes my way. But I think for me it's about, like, I'm fighting for the cause, not the applause, and that's the key. You know, I'm trying to do the right things for Bristol City. At times we've come up short this year as a group. At times we've done very well, but the end game still remains, and we've managed to come through a tricky patch. I think it was tough. There's no doubt. I'd be lying to you if you don't go home and have sleepless nights and question everything you do. But I think that resilience that myself and my staff and my players and their families as well have shown, because everybody wants to succeed for the football club, and when we fall short of our expectations, we get frustrated, we get angry, we get upset, but it's fair game. I held my hands up and apologised on behalf of the squad and myself for the bad run we had, but hopefully, like I said before, the people that maybe didn't believe in us at that point can now turn and look to the future and be excited, because we are securing the Championship and we get another chance to learn from our lessons and go again, improve again next season. You
touched on the short sort of life expectancy, if you like, of a Championship coach. Steve Lansdown spoke on TalkSport earlier this week, talking about you and backing you. You said you back the project as well, about this whole sustainability. It's about sustainability here. How vindicated do you feel that you've managed to achieve securing Championship status? How vindicated do you feel as well in terms of paying something back, almost back to Steve, in terms of his support? Yeah, well, I think that's the key. It's not just Steve. It is Steve, of course, but it's also the board, and they've been rock solid the whole way through. And it's been very, very enjoyable to work with them, but also to, like you say, have improved them right, because that's the key. You know, we want to make sure that you do a good job, you work your socks off every day, and that's the end game, to make sure that the people in power, the people that pay your wages, are happy with the job you do. Obviously, like Steve said, he's as a young manager that's going to make mistakes, but I think all managers make mistakes at times, whether that be in recruitment, team selection, tactics. The bubble is so big now, or so small, if you like, depending on how you look at it. Everything's being scrutinised, and that's something that really we all have to go through, whether that's Arsene Wenger in the Premier League or Gary Johnson at Cheltenham. We're all susceptible to that. So for me, the enjoyable part of it, and I think what stands in really good stead, is how tight
a unit we've been, both sort of the staff, the board and the players, and we've come through a really difficult patch. And like I say, it's nice for Steve Lansdown to be proved right where, let's be honest, other owners and chairmen may have made a change. But it was also the reason that I came, because I believed that, and I believed in Steve as well. And it was also the reason that when your stock's high and you have opportunities maybe to go, that I wanted to stay in and sign a new contract. Again, believed that it was the right place to be.
Well, you talk about managers making mistakes, old and young. I guess each football manager every season goes through something different, uncharted waters. I would guess that perhaps for you it was the Preston away game, a 5-0 loss. How much was that a watershed moment where you knew something had to dramatically change?
Well, I suppose your thoughts are something's got to drastically change. We talked about early on in the season when we lost games that it was very tight, and sometimes it's easier to make drastic changes with such a abysmal loss, if you like. And in the second half I felt we had some in that team that gave up, and that was the bit that disappointed me. Never had I seen that before, and they probably didn't, but it was the perception of the way that we played, and rightly so, that we didn't show the effort on the day, and that's the minimum requirement, particularly for me, play for the shirt. It's a heavy shirt, and it should be a heavy shirt because it's a big club with good tradition. And when we went to Preston and performed like that in the second half, home choose had to be said, and things had to change. And the culture is so important at a football club, and it has to be led from within the dressing room, obviously, after having the rules being set out, and that gave us an opportunity to rewrite the rules, and that's what we did for the remaining games. And unfortunately, or for us, it's worked well, and we've managed to turn the form and it be nigh on championship form.
Yeah, well, you turned the form. It did 13 points from the available 15. Impressive. How it's quite quirky, really, that the last game against Brighton have been your sort of catalyst for change in the season. It started with the 2-0 loss, and now you've overturned them away. Yeah,
well, I think any time we play Brighton, it's a good example to us. You know, Bristol City, similar type cities, what they've done with their stadium, their training facilities, again sustainable in the way they've spent money, youth players that they brought in. So that was a good marker for us, and always is. And it also obviously comes out on the pitch. They've been promoted, rightly so, fantastic team, but we wanted to test ourselves against that. And the future is so positive for this football club, and I thought that game was a great spectacle, really, given the fact that it was on Sky, given the fact that we wasn't expected to win, given the fact that we had a lot of young players on the pitch. And these young players now have been to all these stadiums, and I think it will stand us in really good stead for next year, having experience, not just the young players, the foreign players as well, coming, adapting, understanding about the town, about the culture, about the speed, the intensity of English football. Because we're a place where there's always an element of risk to any signing. We're not able to go and spend your sort of 40-50 millions on players that are guaranteed English, having played 200 games in the Championship and their best. So we're working towards this, we're formulating our philosophies, our style, and really we're sort of building in flight, and that's what we're trying to do.
When you talk about signings, a lot of people would forgive you for having a moment sort of rest to enjoy perhaps the last game of the season and switch off maybe for a few hours, but I know you're already busy scouting for next season. We can see the away shirt that was launched earlier this week behind you. Yeah. It's already full guns blazing. Yeah, of course, it never ends. I always say you can rest when you're dead. And I think that for us it's such a big project here that we always feel like we're behind. You know, we want to keep chasing the dream, and whether that's scouting for new players, and we've got new kit launches, we've got things that we're trying to put in place for next season, both on and off the field. You've got a huge, obviously, recruitment drive that you have every year over the summer, and we're permanently assessing and reassessing the decisions that we've made, the mistakes we've made, the things we've got right, and we strive to get better. Well, thank you very much for talking to us. Best of luck against Birmingham on Sunday, and enjoy some rest. Thanks, Lisa. Cheers.